Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Greg Riley, and Ashley Buckholt dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, sharing our trading expertise to benefit everyone in the supply chain. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. It's episode 101. Hope everybody had a great holiday. Greg, welcome back. Matt's out today. He was traveling, said he's sick, so we have an exciting
off for a holiday weekend and then sick, man. That's no way to roll.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, at least he got back to us on it.
There you go.
So we have an exciting guest today, James Gallagher from Green Light. Did I say your name right, James?
That's right.
All right.
He's a good Irish kid, Ash. He's a good Irish kid, Gallagher.
There you go.
That's right.
There you go. Well, so
Mr. Riley.
So James, kind of came across your company, going through LinkedIn, something popped up. I'm like, well, damn, this is what everybody's complaining about in our industry. The amount of time it takes to permit in some locations to get things done. But before we start with that, James, tell us a little bit about, I saw you go to UPenn?
I did, yeah.
Played a little lacrosse there?
Played a little club lax. Wasn't good enough for the big time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
But, so you're from the Northeast originally?
Born in the Northeast, grew up in North Carolina. It was easier to be a good lacrosse player in North Carolina than it was in the Northeast. So my head got a little big, but I couldn't make it to prime time. So that's okay.
Right on. Right
Yeah.
on. What? So
give us the elevator on Green Light, and then that we can peel it back a little bit.
Yeah. Green Light's solving a real problem. And I think everyone, depending on where they are in the general architectural construction engineering industry, understands that permitting is a problem. Look, fundamentally, the mission is to make permitting better to aid in development across the country. What that means specifically is looking at the way that developers, and that can be residential developers, that can be retailers who are building lots of new units, lots of new stores. It could be the Relateds of the world and the big commercial developers building office towers or mixed use development. The way that they communicate with what we call authorities having jurisdiction, AHJs, right? The city, the county, the agencies that are reviewing permit packages for compliance is just fundamentally broken. It's, it doesn't have enough modern tools. It suffers from the same things that, are affecting the rest of the industry. So just a real labor crunch and talent crunch. Not enough trades are being minted anymore. And those that are retiring are leaving behind a ton of institutional knowledge. And so, if you don't have a guy who's been a master plumber or, an electrician for 25 years who wants to spend the last 10 years of his career working for the city, looking at whether things are being built compliantly anymore, and that's going to affect the city side as well as the job site. And you can't start work until you're compliant.
So a lot of our listeners are in the home building space, multifamily building space, some in commercial, but kind of along the whole chain from small independents that are building 5 homes a year in Portland, Oregon to the large national chains that are building across the United States. And when you look at the different local and state ordinances, I've heard things in Oregon where it can take a year to get a permit in some cases, right? And then I've heard some are a little bit more simple. So how do you at Greenlight address that and go absorb all that data locally and all that? Are you using AI to do that? Or how are you culminating all this data together to create a solution?
Yeah, data is a component, but I think we could start higher level and more simple than that, right? The fundamental issue here is there are 20,000 different jurisdictions in the United States that govern permitting, right? So, you can say you live in Chicago, but what does that mean? Are you in Winnetka? Or where specifically are you? And what county are you in? What jurisdiction has authority?
Mm-hmm.
And every jurisdiction, all 20,000 of them, have a slightly different process for how to build. Let's just choose a simple single family home, right? Here are the forms you need. Here are the requirements we have. Here's how I get permission to put shovels in the dirt and get started on the construction project. And yet, even across all these different jurisdictions, the code is 95% the same. It's building code, which is based on international construction code or international building code, ICC, IBC. So the first problem is that it's really confusing to even know what the requirements are, what the forms are to even get started in permitting, to get permission to construct. And so, that's a big problem, and there are many ways to solve that. But what we really understood, because generally speaking, Greenlight, myself, my business partner, a bunch of us are sort of commercial developers. That's our background. What we really kind of understood is that, all right, the code's the same. All the forms, all the agencies want different things. It's really confusing whether you're building in one town to the next, even if they're right next to each other, what the requirements are. Like, how do we start to build something that works for the developer and for the city and get them to communicate, together? And what we stumbled upon, we were kind of encouraged into this world, was a new industry called private plan review. And that's fundamentally what Greenlight is. We're a private provider. And they call them different things in different parts of the country. The name for a private provider in Texas is Design Review Agency. The name for a private provider in Florida is private provider, TPO, all these different words. But basically, we're a private regulatory agency that gets to represent the regulations of the city and work directly with the developer to get to a compliant yes, so you can start construction. And having been developers, we understand that in real estate, time is money. So the longer this process takes, the more expensive it is, and that's going to go into the cost of the home, and that's going to go into the costs of the housing market. And so, this time, whether it takes a year to get a permit or whether it takes a month to get a permit, is literally embedded in the cost of the home building industry as much as commodities like lumber are. It's a part of the cost structure.
So James, we've got a lot of listeners who are developers, who are home builders, and a lot of people that have relationships with those people, but the truss manufacturers, et cetera. So this is really great. So somebody's going to get started. What's that process look like? Hey, I'm going to build a 20-unit townhouse outside of Minneapolis. What do I do?
It depends on the jurisdiction right now, but we're working hard to make this more universal. So right now, private providers are kind of allowed by right in Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. And then outside of those states where that's statewide, they're allowed to be used. That means the developer, the home builder, can go directly to a private provider rather than going to the town outside of Minneapolis for permission. There are a bunch of states, a bunch of cities and counties across the country that still have a private provider program, even though it's not statewide. So places like Fairfax County, Virginia, have a really big and professional private provider program, even though the state of Virginia doesn't allow private providers statewide yet. And so chances are, if you're looking at your jurisdiction these days, they might have a private provider program. You just don't know about it. Education is a big part of what we do at Greenlight.
So, I've got a private provider program, and so I go to your website.
So you go to our website. Oftentimes we find you in jurisdictions where we know there's a private provider program, and we know who's developing in that jurisdiction.
Okay.
And we say, hey, look, Greenlight, in effect, especially for residential, is the city. So we can be your city. You can treat us like the city. Prepare your permit application the same way you would go in through the city and submit it to Greenlight. And then we have the authority to then review for building code, structural code, electrical, all the MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. If it's commercial, sometimes ADA accessibility, as well as fire and life safety code. And we have licensed architects, licensed engineers, professional engineers on staff who are doing that review. The difference is, because we work for the developer, we want to do it quickly. We know the developer wants to do it quickly. And so, we don't have to kind of go through that really lengthy revision cycle process that tends to drag this permitting process on for a long time for people in the construction industry. we'll get to resolution really quickly. We'll make the changes to make it compliant, or drive, or help the design team make those changes, and then we'll submit a letter of affidavit to the city, and they have 5 days to issue the permit, and you're on your way.
Obviously, when people need variances, that's a big deal, and that's something that you navigate. Also, obviously,
we have the direct authority to do building, MEP for commercial projects, ADA, and fire and life safety in most cases. In Tennessee, we can do zoning and site plan, so civil review for variances, that kind of thing. But that's pretty unique right now, although we're hoping that expands more quickly. For most of our customers, we do sort of expedite the zoning variance side as well. But the difference between zoning and variances and civil site-specific review versus building code is that local zoning is very local, whereas building code is basically international.
right?
So we can get real scale out of focusing on building code and helping people build compliantly. But when you cross, the street, and you're near a church, and you're near a school, and all these sort of different zoning overlays happen, that's where there's a lot of unnecessary but still real complexity in the process.
Yeah, that's where you run into like some person sitting behind a desk just saying no.
Exactly. Yeah, saying no. And sometimes, very oftentimes, there's a good reason for that, right? Maybe it's DOT, can't support the road, the roads can't support the development, or the school systems can't support the development, or the utility can't stub the power to the community, or plumbing, is a problem. Natural gas sometimes in the Northeast is a problem. Like there are very real reasons for a no. But look, at the end of the day, even if it's going to be a no, waiting 9-12 months for a no is what is driving incredible artificial costs into building, and development, right? If you want to get a no, better to get a no in a month or 45 days than a year from now. And you move on, you find a new site, and you figure out where you can do it.
So James, I wanted to make sure I put your website is greenlight.com. It's just www.greenlight, greenlight.com. I want to make sure we put that in there before we. My quick question. So,
thanks, Ashley.
As a private provider, so a private provider could be somebody just sitting in their office with no technology too, right? So I guess my next question is, how does Greenlight, what is your competitive advantage in the private provider space, that the reason why people should use you, and how much faster can you make the process in some places?
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly right. I mean, private provider is not really a new, it's not really a completely new industry. It's definitely growing significantly since COVID, but technically, a private provider, they're traditionally, usually small engineering firms or architecture firms that have local licenses, that have the, kind of subject matter expertise to evaluate CD plan sets, construction drawings, engineered drawings for compliance, right? And so the way that this industry sort of got started before COVID, and really the biggest part of the industry, is that a bunch of mostly small towns lost their building official. They retired, they went into the private sector. This expertise, as you guys know, is in high demand, right? They didn't have a building department to review code anymore, and so they needed to outsource it to an engineering firm. So most of the private plan review industry is doing just that. They're doing overflow work for cities. And having been a developer and gotten, assigned to a private provider, that wasn't always a good thing, right? It meant you couldn't walk in and see the person at the front desk and say, hey, where's my permit? Like, when can I expect my comments? And what Greenlight does is we sort of invert that business model. We go out to builders, to developers, residential and commercial, and we say, especially if you're building across jurisdictions, you could either be you could develop an expertise to get really, really good at a couple of jurisdictions and just build in those jurisdictions because that's your expertise. That's where the rules of the road. Or you can not worry about that, and you can contract with Greenlight, and we can be your city across a wide swath of territory. So regionally, call it Florida, right? Jacksonville is going to be different if you go into Jacksonville than Tampa. But if you use Greenlight, it doesn't matter because we're the same city again and again. So that scale is what we offer our customer, sort of repeatability. And then, yeah, we do the review in a digital way. I mean, we mark up the drawings digitally. That means that every time we are comparing, the code, the local code reference, chapter 12, section 3, this isn't a GFCI outlet. This needs to be a GFCI outlet. It's in a kitchen, right? We're capturing that compliance comment, and we're starting to take those patterns and we're trying to push them up into the design stage. So if you're building again and again and again, you start to see those patterns, and when you do your drawings the first time, you don't make that mistake again. And we also see the things that are frequently kind of coming up as compliance comments, so we can do the reviews faster. And ultimately, especially when it comes to residential, and especially single family residential, those are simple enough projects that there's a real path to automation, to machine learning augmentation. And the analogy I kind of use is like, think about like a radiologist, right? A radiologist, they used to take the printouts of the x-rays and they put them on a light bar, right? And they'd sort of look at it and say, hey, yep, that bone's broken, or hey, there's a spot here. We should probably check this out. Now they have a computer software and they look at hundreds of scans during their shift and they say, hey, there's a little red circle of anomaly that the computer software provides and says, hey, radiologist, does this look normal? That's sort of what we hope to do for private plan review. Is like 90% of the plan is probably compliant, but there's maybe one anomaly that we can circle and have an expert like an architect or an engineer say, hey, this probably isn't compliant. Let me get with the design team and get them to revise that so we can get this drawing approved and stamped and underway. That's what Greenlight's doing.
James, I'm listening and I'm just going through. I'm going, wow. You know what? The regional single family builder, every multifamily developer in jurisdictions that you're allowed to operate in, there's really no reason that I can think of other than the cost that I wouldn't go, wow, I should try Greenlight out. Now, and obviously the cost is that's something that they have to weigh going, well, okay, it's going to cost X, but if I'm approved and I streamline this X, Y, Z, then it's a no-brainer. But I also am thinking, I'm going, wow, wouldn't it be great augment for even national builders that are operating, across the whole country to have you as a resource? Obviously they've got this process internalized, to have that additional. So I don't know if your website doesn't blow up after this, I'm going to be shocked, because there's every one of our listeners that has anything to do with this, should at least check it out, because we've repeatedly heard that, one of the big issues across the country with housing affordability is this cost of permitting, and whether it's the cost or the process, whatever it is, depending on the jurisdiction. You clearly have something that is solving, that is potentially solving a real problem in the industry. And so, awesome. I can hardly wait till we have you back on again and, talk about all your successes.
Just one quick question, Jay. What's your biggest obstacle? Who's your biggest blockers in this? What are you disrupting? What's the main thing you're disrupting? I know it's always tough because unfortunately, you're probably disrupting some human beings, some of the process that takes a long time. But with that said, for some communities and states that you're disrupting, you're probably helping out on budgets with human beings also, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a pretty, if you view it politically when you're dealing with the government, it's a pretty bipartisan, solution here. There's a lot of talk, especially during the recent election cycle, of what do we do to drive housing affordability? And people focused on solving for housing affordability policy are the ones who are sort of pushing private plan review the most. They're the biggest proponents of this. So, I don't think we're really taking from anyone. I mean, Greg, you started to address, why not do this, right? Look, the jurisdictions still get paid. There's still a fee. Greenlight doesn't replace the fee. In many cases, we reduce the fee. And, for our production home builder customers, we sometimes drive the fee down as much as 80% in terms of the plan review fee. So it can be significant, but that, there's still a fee for plan review that's paid to the city and for the permit. So it's not taking money out of the city's pocket. It's augmenting their workforce. I mean, who gets yelled at the most in city government? Plan review, the building department, permitting, zoning, right? I mean, the people who are developing in a city and the people who are theoretically sort of supporting elected officials in that city are the ones who want to do business there, want to build there. And when their projects are stuck in permitting, the elected officials get a call, the mayor's office gets a call, and it kind of rolls downhill under the building department. And they're getting blamed for all these issues, even when it might not even be their fault. So they view us as sort of at least an augmentation to them. Maybe not a lifeline. Maybe that might be dramatic, but at least help, right? And then the actual developers are in favor. We can do permit turnarounds in weeks, certainly less than a year, certainly less than 9 months. And so they're in favor of it. And so I don't think it's not really a zero-sum game. It's kind of just complementary to everyone. It's good to be solving a real problem. It's also good not to be taking out of anyone's pocket. The important thing for this industry and what Greenlight really focuses on is we're not a rubber stamp factory, right? We can't be. We have a compliance responsibility to do this right. We can't just say, yeah, hey, your drawings aren't correct or you're doing something shady and we're going to stamp them anyway and give you an approval. One, it could jeopardize our ability to do work in that state or that county or that jurisdiction later, which we don't want to do. But, also the whole industry, this whole kind of process relies on us doing our job and taking our compliance responsibilities seriously. So we're not going to change the answer. We can't change the answer, but we can get you that answer really quickly and guide you into the right answer so you can get underway. And that communication, that bilateral communication, that's what takes so much time. You have to wait 45 days for the city to give you an answer on something, and then it might not even be totally clear what they're asking you to do. So you have to wait 45 more days to get them to clarify their comment and then that answer. I mean, that's a really frustrating process. So, we can get you that answer much more quickly, and that's how we speed things up. But we're still going to make you be compliant. Right? We have a compliance responsibility.
James, I appreciate you being on here. And since Greg and I really didn't know a lot about the company coming into here, just to kind of close out this part of it, how do people get a hold of you, and what's the best process and the why, real quick?
By all means, any of the listeners can reach out to us at hello@greenlight.com. There are a bunch of contact forms on our website, www.greenlight.com. It's LITE, not LIGHT. Yeah, that's a good way to reach out to us. Yeah, I mean, we support production home builders. We support multifamily. We support commercial work. We do a lot of commercial work. We're most active in the states that have statewide private plan review, but we're active. We've probably done this in over 30 states at this point. And so, we'd love to support. And, if you're someone that does develop, whether it's residential or commercial across regions, we can be really helpful.
We just want all our listeners to do. This is not a paid sponsorship spot. This is legitimately fact finding for Ashley and myself, and, as a service to the industry. I'm sure that, I look forward to when Greenlight is the sponsor of the podcast, but whatever happens. It's cool. Hey, James, great to meet you, man.
We appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ashley. Thanks a lot, Greg. Take care.
All right.
That's cool stuff, huh?
That's really cool stuff. I love it. This is what's going to drive housing affordability forward in the future. Is just little adding technology to what humans do. Like he said, it's not really disrupting anything. The cities, municipalities, everybody still gets paid, right?
I think that's a great thing in terms of blockers. I mean, the only thing we just don't know, people don't know what it costs, right? I mean, they'll have to, do that cost benefit analysis of, hey, if they can really speed this process up and blah, 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 blah. So I wish them all luck. I hope we can have them back in a while and, hear about a whole lot of successes that they've had. Just you and me, Ash.
Lumber,
huh?
Lumber. We kind of went into Thanksgiving, staying steady. You summed it up pretty well today, talking. This is the kind of time of the year where mills kind of build up a little bit of inventory, but yet you're going into seasonal strength. What do we have? What are your thoughts going into the end of December, or maybe the early part of Q1 here?
I mean, and when you asked me this morning, and then, I'm a little bit, I'm struggling a little bit right here. So there's a lot of stuff that's rattling around in my head, and I'm just going to go stream of consciousness right now, if that's okay.
Perfect.
So, I saw on CNBC, 25% of construction workers are migrant, potentially undocumented. So, I mean, we've got a big question mark for 2025 on labor for building. So that's kind of like out there going, I go, okay, wow. Okay. So how's that going to impact things? We've had a really good run up from the summer lows. Spruce items have run anywhere from, $50 to $200 a thousand higher. And then my other side is, well, yellow pines rolled back over and is now back. It's nowhere near the absolute lows of the summertime, but we're back down to numbers that probably don't make sense for a lot of producers. And my backdrop is hey, seasonally, the Q1 is one of the strongest quarters of the year. Why is that? Well, number one is it's the lowest production quarter of the year. Number two is people typically go into the year end with low inventory and need to get in a position for increase, in spring building season. With 80% of housing starts below the Mason-Dixon line, is that less of a factor now than it used to be? Question mark, right? And then obviously when I look, I go, weather is a big deal. What's the weather going to be like? I'm already miserable in Chicago with this weather, but are we going to have, an issue in Canada where there's supply constraints on disruptions because of winter? But are we going to have the situation in January where, you're down into Dallas and Atlanta with ice storms and slow that all up? So, I kind of throw that all together and I go, whew, I'm in a pick'em stage right now. I think if you put a gun to me and say, hey, what would you rather be? I go, hey, we're a distributor, so we're always net long. It's just a question of how net long we're going to be. As you know, I've sold some March and May futures. They're $40 to $50 premiums to today's cash market. So, and then when I talked to the guy this morning, I said, hey, I hope I lose money on this. I hope I lose money. He goes, yeah, well, every time you say that, you make money on your futures. I don't want to. I want to lose.
Well, I had the question, what is the CME? What's the futures really telling us right now in here?
It never tells you anything. It just gives you the opportunity as to what you can do. Is that the way I look at it, Ash?
I've got a great stream of consciousness from you since I've been getting phone calls and emails about this. Hey, did you hear that there may be a 25% tariff on everything coming across from Canada in the new presidency? What's your thought on that? Does that rank right up there with rail strikes and everything else?
Yeah, I have. I've assigned a. Initially, I said that there was a less than 5% chance that we'll have 25% tariffs on everything from Canada, and I think then I went all the way down to 0. Now I'm back up at maybe I'm at 5%. I'm not sure. Like, part of my issue is, and I heard that I heard some of the responses of the Trump Trudeau meeting. Trudeau's on the ropes a little bit internally, so I think that plays into it also.
Do you think Trudeau did the YMCA dance at Mar-a-Lago with them all at the same table or not?
Yeah. I don't know that would have helped him much, but I still believe that it's maximum pressure. I'm not sure exactly what Trump wants from Canada. I know I have a much better sense of what he wants from Mexico. Yeah, we'll see. And in the end, I think that there's going to be no tariffs on anything from Canada.
I just think there's too much coming across from Canada. They're our biggest trading partner. I don't know the exact dollar amount. It's a lot of money, and I think there'll be resolution before then. Hope there is.
So, 80% of their exports come to the U.S. 25% tariff, I think, is $100 billion. A day, a month, a year, whatever it is. It's a lot. And I'm not sure that it serves purpose. Like I said, I'm not sure what he wants from them exactly, but what I do know is, I think he'll get most of what he wants, and there'll be no tariffs. That's what I think. And if there is, people should be loading up their U.S. reloads right now. Let's go.
So, we're seeing a little bit of inventory being accumulated, but there sure hasn't been much, from what I can see, of an inventory build with the big players. And do they really need to? I guess that's my question. If they can pass this on to, obviously they don't want to run out of lumber, but the way everything's dialed in with 30 to 60 day price locks with builders, is there really a need to build a lot of inventory unless that changes?
Yeah, well, we saw what happened when people were running lean inventories, and we're going hand to mouth, and what happened to prices from mid-July until now. That was a little bit of more inventory build. So yeah, no, that's a legitimate point with the business the way it is now, where there's not much price risk by on the retail end. There's not the same need to have those big pushes where you need to add 30 days of inventory really quick because you just priced out a quarter. The
business in the world we live in, I think this is setting up to really be a good business to be in again next year. And because I think people are paying people to keep inventory around them, to keep a lot of inventory around them. You're actually getting premiums for truckload delivered over cars because of the way the current inventory level. So I think it's going to set up for another year of in the wholesale and distribution industry, if you're positioned right, to really be happy you're in the business still, right?
Absolutely. The distribution business is good. It's hard. It's a hard business, but it's a good business these days. That's for sure. Guess we'll look forward to getting Charles on next week, getting an update on Yellow Pine, huh?
Yeah, I want to do that. I want to kind of get some. I want to work on getting somebody on for Euro also to talk to. Maybe somebody over in Europe. We talked to some people in Vancouver, and I'd like to just get their insight into what's going on over there. On another positive note, we're doing the Montreal Wood Convention in April, doing that live. So looking forward to getting the crew up there and doing that and getting a little bit more exposure.
That's going to be really fun. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'll see you back at the office.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumber Word podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.